Trump signed an executive order that makes being homeless or mentally ill illegal. And they want to involuntarily commit you into an insane asylum or a prison where they could use you as slave labor via the 13th Amendment. Huh. Well, ain't that something? And you don't need to take my opinion for it. We're going to take it from the horse's mouth. This is whitehouse.gov. This is the actual executive order ending crime and disorder on America's streets. Now, of course, it's an executive order, so it's full of fluff meant to distract you so that the average American doesn't consume what the overall point of this is. But if you know anything about history, this is very reminiscent of the Aktion T4 program in Germany, the involuntary euthanasia program before the Holocaust in Germany. Some even argue it's the first stage of the Holocaust, where it was totally legal. This is my point, in that in Germany it was totally legal to round up the disabled and the mentally ill and kill them. So it's a weird, listen, as somebody who studies history, this is not the type of shit that I fuck with, man. This is like dangerous games, dangerous prizes. But first things first, let's just go over the wiki of the Aktion T4 program. This is back in Nazi Germany. It was a campaign of mass murder by involuntary euthanasia, which targeted people with disabilities and the mentally ill in Nazi Germany. The term was first used in post-war trials against doctors who had been involved in the killings. The name T4 is an abbreviation for Tiergartenstrasse 4, a street address for the Chancellery Department set up in the early 1940s, which recruited and paid personnel associated with Aktion T4. Certain German physicians were authorized to select patients, quote, deemed incurably sick after most critical medical examination, and then administer to them a mercy death. Adolf Hitler signed a euthanasia note backdated to September 1st, 1939, which authorized his physician Karl Brandt and Reichsleiter Philipp Böhler to begin the killing. Between 275,000 and 300,000 people were killed in psychiatric hospitals in Germany and Austria. Many of them were children, by the way. So now you have some back news on like how dangerous it is to start classifying mentally ill and homeless people as dangers to society and rounding them up. Now let's go over the actual executive order itself. So there is a lot here. I've already read through this, and we're going to try to piece through it to show you the meat and potatoes. That's what I like to call it. If you're new here, there's a lot of bread in here. We don't want the bread. We want the meat and potatoes, okay? But this is some fucked up shit, so I want you to prepare yourself. Endemic vagrancy, disorderly behavior, sudden confrontations, and violent attacks have made our cities unsafe. The number of individuals living on the streets in the United States on a single night during the last year of the previous administration, 274,224, was the highest ever recorded. The overwhelming majority of these individuals are addicted to drugs, incorrect, have a mental health condition, or both. Nearly 2/3 of homeless individuals report having regularly used hard drugs like methamphetamines, cocaine, or opioids in their lifetimes. An equally large share of homeless individuals reported suffering from mental health conditions. The federal government and the states have spent tens of billions of dollars on failed programs that address homelessness, but not its root causes, leaving other citizens vulnerable to public safety threats. So the funny part about this line here, but not its root causes, is that nowhere in this executive order will they be addressing the root causes of homelessness, which are mental health crises and the affordability crisis. People often look at a homeless person and think they're like so vastly different from them. They're not. The majority of people who are homeless because they can't afford rent. They're not homeless because they're addicted to drugs. That's not why they're fucking homeless. They're homeless because the United States has an inherently impossible economic structure. But nobody can afford to fucking buy a house anymore. And you miss one goddamn month of rent. Next thing you know, you're fucking homeless. Okay, here we go. This is where we get some meat. Shifting homeless individuals into long-term institutional settings for, quote, humane treatment through the appropriate use of civil commitment. Now, if you don't know what this is, civil commitment is involuntary institutionalization, right? It's like when people are a genuine, like, it's used a lot for like paranoid schizophrenics who are going through a manic episode, right? Because they're sometimes can be genuinely a danger to themselves or others. Then they will, you know, involuntarily throw you into a center until you're stabilized again, and then you can, you know, reason with reality. But they are trying to use that same civil commitment on people who are simply homeless. It has nothing to do with mental illness. It has everything to do with just being homeless. Surrendering our cities and citizens to disorder and fear is neither compassionate to the homeless nor other citizens. My administration will take a new approach on protecting public safety. So there's the meat, and now let's try and pick up some of the potatoes here. So this one is a little alarming. Seek, in appropriate cases, the reversal of federal or state judicial precedents and the termination of consent decrees that impede on the United States' policy of encouraging civil commitment. So what does this mean? This means that they're going to try and reverse or destroy any sort of judicial law that prevents the federal government from involuntarily committing you into an institution. They're trying to make it way easier to just snag you up. But look at this. This is where it gets fucked. Involuntary commitment of individuals with mental illness who pose risks to themselves or the public. Now, mind you, this is what the Trump regime says. You have a mental illness and you pose risks to yourself. It's not up to you or your doctor. It's up to the Trump regime. But watch this. Individuals with mental illness who pose a risk to themselves or the public, or are living on the streets and cannot care for themselves. Or is really important. Or means this isn't about homeless people who are mentally ill and pose a risk to themselves or the public. No, that would be and. This is or. This is the Trump regime subtly, quietly saying that they want to start locking up people with mental illnesses who pose a risk to themselves or the public. Or homeless people. They want both. That's why I brought up the Aktion T4 program. This isn't about like, oh, he's mentally ill and homeless and he's a danger to the public. No, it's about these people are mentally ill and these people are homeless. Round them all up. That's what this is. And anybody who's going to say to me in the comments like, wow, Chris, you're really jumping to conclusions here. Do you not think that people were screaming their fucking head off when they started rounding up disabled children in Nazi Germany? I hope to God I'm wrong. But if I'm not, I ain't taking the risk of keeping my fucking mouth shut. Oh, and not to mention that the people who have a higher chance of becoming homeless are people who are like low income, LGBTQ, black, minorities. Like, this isn't about the white people. Okay. Provide assistance through technological grants or legal available for the identification, adoption, implementation of maximally flexible civil commitment. Okay, so look at this. Where is it? The step-down treatment, mental illness, supposed dangers, living in the streets, cannot care. That's not the juicy part. The juicy part is this. Okay, look at this. So now the Trump regime is saying, if you do not follow our orders, you will no longer receive federal funding. Not even kidding. Look. The Attorney General, the Secretary of Human Services, the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, and the Secretary of Transportation shall take immediate steps to assess their discretionary grant programs and determine whether priority for those grants may be given to grantees in states and municipalities that actively meet the below criteria. So what does this mean? This means they are going to give priority to states that follow this list of demands, which in other words means they're not going to give federal funding, or they're going to withhold it as long as possible to states that don't follow this list and just sow chaos, right? And the rules are this. Enforce prohibitions on open illicit drug use. So you know that joint you like to smoke in Central Park? Nope. Get rid of it. Enforce prohibitions on urban camping and loitering. You know what that means? Being homeless, illegal. Enforce prohibitions on urban squatting. Say goodbye to squatters' rights. This is all for the landlords. Enforce, where necessary, adopt standards that address individuals who are a danger to themselves or others, or suffer from mental illness or substance abuse disorder, who are living in the streets and cannot care for themselves, through assisted outpatient treatment or by moving them into treatment centers of other appropriate facilities via civil commitment or other available means to the maximum extent permitted by the law. So just involuntarily throwing people into fucking mental institutions. Now, here's another piece of the juice here. The registration notification for sex offender registry, particularly in the case of registered sex offenders with no fixed addresses, included by adequately mapping and checking the location of homeless sex offenders. Now, here's the thing. You read this and you go, oh, yeah, dude, I fucking hate sex offenders. Of course, everybody fucking hates sex offenders. And tracking homeless sex offenders sounds like a good thing, right? Yeah. However, that's not what their plan is here. What their plan is right underneath it. The Attorney General shall ensure that homeless individuals arrested for federal crimes are evaluated to determine whether they are sexually dangerous persons and certified accordingly for civil commitment. So this means that a homeless person who is arrested for a federal crime, now primarily a lot of these homeless people are minorities, a lot of them are LGBTQ, they're gay, they're trans, right? So they are going to classify any homosexual person, which was registered as a mental illness until like 1990, or any transgender person who was homeless, as a sexually dangerous person because they are publicly gay, publicly trans, and homeless, surrounded by the public. That is the plan here. Unfucking believable shit. Encampment removal efforts for areas where public safety is at risk. Oh, look at this. All right, so they... Yeah. Okay, so detainees with serious mental illness are not going to be released into the public because of a lack of bed capacity at the jails. So even if there's not enough beds, they're just going to cram all of these people in there. I mean, what do you expect? We got that going on at Donald's Dachau in the Florida Everglades. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, now get this. I don't know if you guys know too much about like the, heavy drug areas where people are, really fucking using hard drugs. But one of the things that can save people's lives is something called Narcan. When people are overdosing on like heroin or fentanyl, the ambulance can pull up with a thing called Narcan. Even the cops have it on them sometimes. You hold it up to their nose, they breathe it in, and it can save your life when you're overdosing. Now, Narcan is considered a harm reduction chemical, right? Or there's also like, there's places where people use heroin so much that there are places to go get safe needles, right? Clean needles, because these people are using dirty needles and giving themselves fucking AIDS, right? So this says, discretionary grants used by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services for Substance Abuse Disorder Prevention, Treatment, and Recovery fund evidence programs and do not fund programs that fail to achieve adequate outcomes, including harm reduction or safe consumption efforts that only facilitate illegal. So they want more people to die. That is their plan here. They want more people to overdose or get some sort of fucked up needle in them. That is part of their plan. How do we get rid of the homeless people? Well, how do we get rid of the drug addicts? Well, just let them fucking die. Just let them fucking die. Oh, lordy, lordy, lordy. Provide technical assistance to assisted outpatient treatment programs for individuals with serious mental illness or addiction during and after the civil commitment process, focused on shifting such individuals off the streets and into public programs and into private housing and support networks. I have no problem with that. These people need housing, but they're never going to follow through with that one. Okay. What else do we got here? Oh, yeah, look at this. These actions shall include, to the extent permitted by the law, ending support for, quote, housing first policies. So you want to criminalize homelessness, and at the same time, you want to end funding for housing first policies that would give these people places to live? That deprioritize accountability and self-sufficiency, This is the very definition of the pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. They're literally saying, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps, and if you don't, go to fucking prison. What the fuck are we talking about? And don't forget about the 13th Amendment, where you can literally use people in prison as slave labor. Oh, Lord. Look at this. With respect to the federal housing and homelessness assistance that operate drug injection sites or safe consumption sites, knowingly distribute drug paraphernalia, that's the clean needles we were just talking about, or permit the use or distribution of illicit drugs on property under their control. So they're going to get rid of the funding for all the safe needle sites. More people are going to overdose and die. That's literally their fucking plan. That is unironically their fucking plan. They're going to freeze the federal funding for housing initiatives. They're going to freeze the fucking funding for housing initiatives. Oh, dear God, bro. Oh, and this is the last part here. It's fucked. So get this. Require the recipients of federal funding for homelessness assistance to collect their health-related information. That's your private health records. And then the next part says they will share such data with law enforcement authorities. Remember when I said that they were going to build concentration camps and round up all you autistic fucks? I'm just kidding. I'm equally as autistic. I think that's the plan. They're trying to make it so that if you're homeless, if you're mentally ill, and you have private health records, all of those health records, which are going to be downloaded by the fucking Palantir supercomputer, Mecha Hitler, they're going to be sent to the local law enforcement, who is actually going to be the volunteer Proud Boy white supremacists in ICE, and then they're going to come snatch you off the street and say, give me your passport, burn it, and then fucking send you to Donald's Dachau in the Florida Everglades. Huh? Meanwhile, there was another executive order. We're not going to cover it, but it was just like anti-woke AI. It was like, yeah, we're going to get rid of woke AI. It was essentially just saying, like, no robot is allowed to be woke. We're making super mecha Hitler. What? What? Anyway, if you're live, you can stay. If you're watching this pre-recorded, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It costs you nothing, and it helps me immensely. A huge shout out to all of my patrons, for people giving $2, $5, $8 a month. You guys are huge. There's 36 of you. I love you all. Big shout out to all of the members giving $5 a month. If you want to buy some merch, we have a great new merch drop coming. A lot of the merch is disappearing. All right, you have like a week. So if you want that merch, get it now. We have great new merch coming, and you're going to fucking love it. And you can just donate to the channel, hitting the thanks button. Thank you very much. Hit that fucking video right over there. It's a banger, and I know bangers.